So how is Akasha subtlest and Earth the most gross? Let us look. Akasha is a manifestation which can be only perceived in the form of sounds. The Vedas were downloaded as cosmic sounds which reverberate as the cosmos. So the dimension of this network of vibration is Akasha. The Akasha is the cosmic archive that houses all information of the cosmos as sounds. And this explains why the Vedas were downloaded in the form of sounds which are mantras. Vayu. Vayu can be perceived through sound and touch. So Vayu is slightly more gross than Akasha because while Akasha can be only perceived through sound, Vayu has another component to it, which is touch. Vayu further condenses to Agni. Agni Bhagavan can be perceived through sound, touch and form. So Agni is the first of the elements to have a form. Water can be perceived through not just sound, touch and form but also taste, rasa. So Vayu can be, the additional component for Vayu is touch, sparsha, Agni is rupa, water is rasa, taste. And finally Earth. Earth can not only be perceived through sound, touch, form and taste but it also has gandhaha, smell. So in the Upanishad, the Surya Upanishad of the Atharva Veda, we find a verse that beautifully goes as Adityo vai shabdasparsha rupa rasa gandhaha. Here Surya Bhagavan, and in the Upanishad, Surya is verily referred to as the Atma, our Atma, or an absolute reality. So he is said to be the very manifestation or the source for Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa and Gandhaha. Now coming back to Mantrapushpam, this stanza reveals the truth. The stanza that we saw reveals the truth of fire being the source for water and vice versa. So how is this so? From the Upanishad, we understand that it is the same Atma, same absolute reality, which is expressing in different densities as the 5 elements. So in real, the essence to all 5 elements is one. We notice water being the source for fire when we observe lightning arising from the water clouds. Vice versa, the fire of digestion takes form of water in the digestive juices of the alimentary canal. In a profounder dimension, the absolute reality, which is represented as water in the Mantrapushpam, becomes the source for fire. I explained this using the verses of the Upanishads and Purusha Suktam earlier on how fire is a result of consolidation of the absolute reality. Fire in the form of inspiration or knowledge drives one to seek the truth of the self to experientially realize the Atma. Thus, fire here becomes a source to enlightenment, the abode of absolute reality symbolized by water. As per the Vedic culture, Lord Agni is manifest not just as fire but as also the inner energy, momentum and inspiration. Let us look at the next mantra. Vayurva apamayatanam ayatanavan bhavati yo vayorayatanam veda ayatanavan bhavati apo vai vayorayatanam ayatanavan bhavati ya evam veda yopamayatanam veda ayatanavan bhavati. Word to word commentary. Vayuhu, which means Vayu Bhagavan, Vai, which means verily, Apam, which means waters, Ayatanam, which means abode, Ayatana Van, mergence, meaning going back to the abode, Bhavati, which means to become, Yaha, which means whosoever, Vayoho, which means from Vayu, Veda, which means to realize. So commentary, at a literal level, this stanza proclaims Vayu for being the source of water. One who realizes the abode of Vayu attains that abode. Likewise, water is the source for Vayu. One who realizes this attains that abode. One who knows the abode of water attains that abode. We can take an example of air condensing to form solid water. You see this during the formation of dewdrops. Vice versa, water evaporates to form vapor. thus being a source to Vayu. In a profounder level, Vayu in the form of prana or life force can be utilized to attain self-realization. Every sadhana involves the utilization of life force. In Vedic Samskrita, one definition for Rudra is life force. When life force exceeds the body, a body drops down as corpse. A corpse is surrounded by people who weep and mourn. This is one reason why Rudra is described as he who causes one to weep, because he is the manifest life force. So when we concentrate our prana and utilize it in an intelligent way, it can pave way towards enlightenment. Thus, here Vayu in the form of life force becomes a gateway to the state represented by abode in the Mantrapushpam of the absolute reality. Absolute reality is represented by water in the Mantrapushpam. Next mantra. Asau vai tapannapamayatanam ayatanavan bhavati yo mushyatapata ayatanam veda ayatanavan bhavati apo va amushyatapata ayatanam ayatanavan bhavati ya evam veda yopamayatanam veda ayatanavan bhavati. Word to word meaning. Asau meaning having a particular state. Vai, which means verily. Tapan, which means the property to cause heat. Apam, which means waters. Ayatanam, which means abode. Ayatana van, which means mergence back to the abode. Bhavati, which means become. Yaha, which means whosoever. Amushya, meaning whoever with a particular state. So whoever who has a particular state. Which state? It's not specified. Tapataha, which means heating, to heat something. So commentary, at a literal level, this stanza states that the source of heat is the source to the water. One who realizes this attains that abode. Vice versa, water is the source to the source of heat. Yes, meaning a source which produces heat. So water is the source to something which stays as a source to heat. One who realizes this attains that abode. One who realizes the source of water attains that abode. So we see this in the reality in the form of the scorching sun, which is responsible for the water cycle. Water in the form of rain is possible only due to the heat produced by the sun. Vice versa, water at a peak temperature becomes a source for heat. We see this in the form of hot springs and volcanic eruptions. At a deeper understanding, heat in the form of tapas or penance paves way towards enlightenment. Enlightenment, which is this state of absolute reality. One who realizes this attains the abode of enlightenment. In fact, tapas comes from the word tapta, which means heat. Penance is the manifestation of the spiritual heat. By the same token, absolute reality, which is represented by water, is the source for heat. It is the internal Atma which is responsible for the inner heat which sustains our being. The Narayana Sukta of the Yajur Veda beautifully describes this. With the verse that goes, Santapayati svandehamapadatalamastakah tasya madhye vanhi shikha aniyo orvhavyavasthitaha. So this mantra means that at the center of the spiritual heart is placed the Atma of atomic size facing upwards and which is fiery in nature. This heats up the body completely and equally from top to toe. So commentary, this whole sukta, Narayana Sukta, speaks about the anatomical location of the Atma in the body, and this verse that we just saw specifically describes the Atma as the powerhouse which heats and empowers the body by supplying heat. The next mantra. Chandramava apamayatanam ayatanavan bhavati Yaschandramasa ayatanam Veda ayatanavan bhavati. Apo vai chandramasa ayatanam ayatanavan bhavati. Ya evam Veda yopamayatanam Veda ayatanavan bhavati. Chandrama, which means the moon, Vai, which means verily, Apam, which means waters, Ayatanam, which means abode, Ayatana Van, which means mergence with the abode, Bhavati, which means becomes, Yaha, which means whosoever, Chandramasa, which means from the moon, Ayatanam, which means abode, and Veda, which means to realize. So, commentary. In a superficial aspect, the Vedas proclaim the moon as a source for water through this mantra. We already saw the significance of moon and water in the earlier verses. So one who realizes the abode of the moon attains that abode. In parallel, water is the source for the moon. This is what the mantra speaks. The earth, as we know, comprises 70% water. The moon was formed when a celestial body with a similar size to mass collided with the earth nearly about 4.5 billion years ago. The impact generated intense heat, causing both the earth and the colliding object to partially melt, and a considerable amount of debris was ejected into space. And over time, debris eventually aggregated and formed the moon as a natural satellite to the earth. Now coming to the deeper view of the mantra. In a profounder aspect, the mind is a source for the absolute reality. One who gains mastery over the mind and goes beyond it is established in the state of enlightenment. The very absolute reality, on the other hand, is the source to the moon as well, as it condensed to form consolidated celestial bodies like the moon. Next mantra. Nakshatrani va apamayatanam ayatanavan bhavati. Yo nakshatranam ayatanam Veda ayatanavan bhavati. Apo vai nakshatranam ayatanam ayatanavan bhavati. Ya evam Veda yopamayatanam Veda ayatanavan bhavati. So let's look at the word-to-word meaning. Nakshatrani, which means constellations of stars. Vai, which means verily. Apam, which means waters. Ayatana Van, which means mergence with the abode. Bhavati, which means to become. Yaha, which means whosoever. Nakshatranam, of the constellations. Ayatanam, which means abode, and Veda, which means to realize. At a literal context, the stars are the source for water. One who knows this attains the abode, meaning the source or origin of the stars. Verily, water is the source to the stars. One who knows this attains that abode. One who knows the abode of water attains that abode. The changing seasons are linked with specific patterns of the star constellations. In the ancient times, the appearance of the Orion constellation marked the beginning of the rainy season. Even today, astronomers rely on star constellations to locate certain celestial bodies like the comets and asteroids that may contain water. Recently, numerous space missions have been launched to investigate celestial objects within our solar system, including the Moon and the Mars, in search of water resources. Some of these missions have utilized data which was obtained from star constellations to help locate their intended targets. So water becomes a source to the constellation. The constellations come to use for seagoers for navigation. At a deeper context, the constellations become a source for one to be established in the Atmic abode. The constellations play a very important role in the Vedic culture in determining one's life destiny and his or her tendencies. This includes the tendency to seek or move towards self-knowledge. Our auspicious days in the Hindu calendar are also based on the constellations, which again become a source to our emergence into the absolute reality. Vice versa, the absolute reality becomes a source to the constellations. The stars are present in the form of gaseous substance, which is simply a consolidated form of the absolute reality. As we saw in the Upanishad earlier, from absolute reality becomes Akasha, Akasha to Vayu. So the gaseous state of these stars, constellations, are in the form of Vayu, which is nothing but a consolidated form of the absolute reality. Thus here absolute reality becomes a source for the constellations.